Hey everybody, this is Alex Fabrega coming at you again with another Teaching Tips Tuesday. Today I have with me Jenny Wheeler. She is a Braille transcriptionist and TVI who does some contract work for FBC. How are you doing today, Jenny?
Excellent. Thank you, Alex.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being on. So we've been talking about Braille on and off on Teaching Tips Tuesday for about the last month and a half, and you are here to talk about a whole other facet of Braille that I actually have no personal experience with yet, and that is music Braille. Absolutely. So I'll admit that, just literary Braille, Nemeth code is already difficult, and music Braille seems quite intimidating to the uninitiated. Can you allay some of those concerns for me?
I would love to do that. I actually came into the field in a backdoor way. I started out in music Braille. As a matter of fact, I knew that there were Braille reading students, but I didn't know anything about music Braille. I didn't even know that a code existed for it. So I did a little bit of research and I found out that you could actually take a music Braille course through the Library of Congress, which has now transferred to another agency, but it's still available. But you did have to learn literary Braille first. So I went through the literary Braille, then I went through the math Braille, and then I finally made it to the music Braille, even though that was my first love. It took me a little while to get there. And the course itself did take me longer than the other two, but only because it was so intricate and involved. And I know that especially for people who are coming into Braille music teaching without a music background, it can feel very intimidating. But I will say that of all the Braille codes that I have had experience with, it is the most elegant, the most beautiful. Print music is also a beautiful code, but it's spatial, as you know, and you don't have the same kind of space when you do Braille transcription. So you actually have to do it in a linear fashion. And so it seems like it's not intuitive, but actually it's so well put together. It's so beautifully organized. I actually think it's a little easier than print music. So really the intimidating factor is the print music itself for anybody who doesn't have a music background. It's a lot of symbols to learn, and it looks very complicated. And so really I would say to teachers, the first place to start, if you would like to learn music Braille, or if you have a student who's interested in having music Braille transcription, the best place to start is just a really brief introduction to music course, because that will take away a lot of the intimidation. And then the music Braille itself is just like learning literary Braille once you know the symbols.
Okay, well that takes a little bit of the edge off on the intimidation factor. Have you found that students get pretty excited once they have the opportunity to feel the music?
Yes. I think, first of all, because a lot of our students really have an affinity for and a connection to music already, they've already got pretty practiced ears. They've been paying attention to it all their lives, those who are in music courses, who are taking choir, who are interested in doing band. The Braille music, it gives them a whole new dimension. It gives them an independence. It gives them a connection with the music that their peers have. And I think that the first time that they're introduced to it, it is very exciting. Even though it's a lot to learn all at once, they really want to dive into it and they love it. And I've had a lot of comments over the years that I've done transcription, just how grateful students are to have access to it. And I know what a difference it makes for them. And I know what a difference it makes to have their teachers involved with them, learning it and teaching it. Even though they might be learning together, it is such a valuable experience.
Okay. So I played trumpet in middle school, so I am an expert in sheet music already, so you don't need to explain this to me. But for the folks back home, kind of break down, I think everybody knows what a note is, but how much information can be conveyed or needs to be conveyed just for a single note?
In a single note, you're going to have the pitch and the length of time. So if you think about print music, there are two 5-line staves typically that are used. If you just talk about piano music, there's an upper staff and a lower staff. Each one has 5 lines on it. And the notes are placed on or inside those 5 lines on each staff. Where it's placed is what tells you how high or how low it goes. And you can see that just in print music, that if it's at the very top of the two sets of staves, then it's going to be a high note. If it's at the bottom, it's going to be a low note. And that's true. That's true whether it's an upper instrument playing it or a lower instrument playing it. So you have the pitch or the location of the note. Then you also have how long it lasts. Each note is going to have a certain number of counts, and these are very mathematical. A note might last for one count, which is just going to be basically one clap. It might be a fast clap, it might be a slow clap, but that's all. It might be 2, it might be 4, it might be 20, it might be half or a quarter. And so Braille music actually, in an even more elegant way, I think, than print, it's able to convey all of that information in a single symbol. So one Braille symbol will tell you both the pitch of the note, and it will also tell you the length of the note.
Huh.
Then there are octave signs, which go before the notes, and those octave signs will tell you exactly how high or how low to play. And you don't have to have an octave sign in front of every note. There are rules that govern that, just like there are rules that govern everything in Braille music. And so as few symbols as possible are used to convey all of the information on the page.
Well, that already clears up an assumption I had. I figured you'd need 2 different symbols, one for pitch, one for duration. I had no idea that you could compact them, so that's really neat.
It's pretty incredible. And in print, it looks complicated, but it's actually pretty easy because the pitch and the duration of the note are included in the same symbol. The difference is just that in print, it'll appear higher or lower, but in Braille, you've got that little octave sign.
Okay. I assume there are also some kind of modifier keys, or modifier symbols like flats, sharps.
There are.
Stuff like that.
There are, in fact, yes. Actually, one of the symbols used for an accidental, which is a flat or a sharp, or something that just changes the pitch of the note a small amount, like a half step higher, a half step lower. The sharp is the same as the SH in literary Braille. It's one of the few symbols in music Braille that actually has a correlation to literary Braille. And so a few of those symbols are pretty easy to learn. The flat is just the GH in literary Braille, and the natural is a CH. So, I tell my students, because they're already used to literary Braille, and a lot of them also to math when they start to learn music Braille, I just tell them, listen, you're going to see a lot of the same symbols because Braille repeats itself. And so I have to teach them to think in a music mode. And it doesn't take them very long to figure that out.
So that's a third setting in your Braille brain. You have literary mode,
Yeah.
math mode, music mode.
Yeah. Yeah, and usually by the time that they come to music, they're already used to switching back and forth between multiple codes. And so it's not very different. And some of the symbols are a little harder to memorize than others, and some of the concepts are a little bit harder. But once again, that's more of a music teaching issue than it is a music Braille teaching issue. More just helping students to understand how rhythms are divided, how they're represented, how notes are represented, how they're played. Because there are a lot of ways to do that. And just like in literary Braille, there are multiple ways to achieve some of the ends.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, this has been eye-opening for me. It feels like when you're a TVI that nobody else in the world knows anything about the vision world. And then it's crazy how even as a TVI, there's still things that I have no idea about, that I have these misconceptions that I still need to clear up. That is a beautiful part of the field, I would say.
I agree. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on today and demystifying a little bit of this music Braille. I have one more question for you, and that is, what is your favorite part of your job?
My favorite part of my job is the kids, the students. Every single one of them, I learn something different from. Every one of them makes me a better professional. Every one of them makes me interested in learning something new. It makes me humble because I realize just how little I still know, even after a lot of years in the field. And that is a joy. And so I would credit them with helping me to be the best kind of professional teacher I want to be.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again so much for coming on Teaching Tips Tuesday.
Thank you so much, Alex. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you so much at home for giving another watch to another episode of Teaching Tips Tuesday. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or topics that you want to see addressed, please leave it in a comment. I will try and find an expert we can get to talk us through with it. And we hope to see you next week. Have a good one.